Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Today we are going to start doing the top end of this 2020 TC125. If you guys want to learn how to disassemble this thing, make sure to go back my most recent video. I have a link down in the description for you to check that out. Okay, so this video is basically for anybody who wants to rebuild a two-stroke motorcycle. All the things kind of apply to any two-stroke. This will be exactly to spec of anything probably 2016 and up of a KTM and a Husqvarna 125 and 250 and 50s, what have you, any of them. Alright, some things you're going to want to need is a whole gasket set if you're going to do the full gasket. If not, you can just take off the top end, but for me, I'm just going to change out every single gasket we have. So there's that. The next thing you're going to want to need is a piston. This is a Vortex piston. I'm pretty sure this is what they use in the stock bike anyways, and it so far has done pretty good, so why not replace it with OEM. So the first thing we're going to do is take off the top motor mounts, and so that will be these two T-sockets here and the ones here, and do the same thing on the other side. Alright, so the next thing we're going to do is drain the coolant out of the bike, so that will be this bolt here. Make sure to check with your manual to see where your actual drain plug is for the coolant. It may differ from bike to bike, so make sure to check your owner's manual for that. If you can't find that in your owner's manual or anything, a nice easy thing to do is take off your bottom hose clamp here, and you can take off this and drain all the coolant from the furthermost bottom hose. Okay, so now that the coolant is all drained, we can take off this top radiator hose.
Hi guys!
Next thing we're going to do is take off these head bolts here. So let's get to that.
Okay, now that we got these ones out, we have this one up here and it's going to be an 8mm.
Alright, now that we have all the bolts out, we can take off the head. Alright, so you can see that we have a low oxidation, but with a little cleaning up, I think we should be good with this head. No nicks or anything in it, so all good to go. Okay, so right here, you can see our piston. If you move our kicker, you can see she moves a little bit there. So what I'm going to do is try to set it down to the lowest point. I think that's about the lowest point there. So whenever we pick this up, it'll be a lot easier for me to just pop it right off. Okay, so next thing we're going to do is take off this little cover here. You're going to use a T25. So next thing you want to do is take out this pin. It's on like a little ball thing. It's for your power valve adjuster. Alright, so all you want to do is take your tweaker and put it in here and try to pop out this ring, and make sure you don't drop it down into your bottom ring. Alright, and then this is that pin I was talking about, and now you can pull this out. And then there's your little guy there.
Okay guys, now that we took this side off the cover and this thing here, we're going to go over to the other side and we're going to take this cover plate off here too.
Alright, so now that we have this cover plate off, we can get to this bolt here. These 4 bolts will be able to take off the whole entire cylinder head. So that will be a 12mm. The ones that are inside the cover plates, you're gonna have to use a wrench to get those. So make sure you get a 12mm wrench and then take those out. So when you take off the cylinder off of this, make sure to take off this in a star pattern, same as you did with the cylinder head. Alright, so now that all 4 of these bolts are taken out, we are able to slide up the cylinder. Alright, so here's our cylinder. It looks as if nothing is wrong with it, so that is a good sign. Our piston, we'll take a look at that and see how she is. The piston seems to be okay, just a little wear and tear as normal, and we're just going to freshen her up with a new one. So let's take this piston out. There's little C-clips in here on both sides, so we need to use a tweaker to undo those. Before we take these out, because when you take these out they start to fly everywhere, so we're going to put in microfiber towels around here so it doesn't drop into the bottom end, and then we have a bigger problem. That literally shot across the room. Time to do the other side.
She a goner too.
But now that both of these clips are pushed out, we are able to push out this little bearing thing in the middle. In order to get this little cylinder out of the piston, all you have to do is get a socket that's around the same size and smack it out. I'm going to use a 10mm RJ45 connector crimpers. Now our piston is all out. Alright, so here's our stock piston. Not too bad. Definitely would like to replace this before something bad happens to it. So time to clean up our cylinder and our cylinder head and make sure everything's nice and clean before we throw it back into the motor. Since we're doing a full top end rebuild and I see a little oil leaking in from the valve area, I'm going to take off this cover here and also throw in a new gasket there as well and just clean it all up. Alright, we got our little valve cover, I guess this would be called. And we're going to clean this all up as well and take out the gasket for it. Alright, so now that this is all disassembled, I'm going to start cleaning up everything and then we can start reassembling the top end. Alright, all I have is some engine cleaner and degreaser, so that's what I'm going to use to clean all this stuff off. This cylinder is all cleaned up and ready to go into the bike, and so is the valve cover, and now we have to go clean up the cylinder head. Okay, so now that all these parts are clean, we can throw in the gaskets. Here's our new gasket here. It's a little bit different. As you can see, these are 2 separate pieces. I'm not too sure why this one's one full piece that goes all the way around, but let's push that in. This gasket material here seems a little excessive, so I think you're supposed to cut the edges of them. I'm not too sure. But let's move up to the top of the cylinder and we can throw in these guys right here. This little O-ring here and this other O-ring right there. Let's throw on our cover. Alright, all the gaskets are on there nicely. let's move over to the piston and install that. Alright, so here's our brand new Vortex piston, and we can install the rings now. You want to make sure that you can see those two little pins there at all times. Make sure the gaps come up to those and not covering over top of it. So the rings that came in my kit, one is a lighter copper and one is a darker copper. The darker copper one goes on the bottom and the lighter copper one goes on top. Your open end is where those little holes are at. So now let's get our lighter copper ring and slide that on over. And this one sits in there as well. Now that we got our rings on, we can throw the piston into the bike. If you're wondering which direction the piston is going, usually on most pistons they have a arrow that is pointing towards the front of the bike. So our piston will go in this orientation. So you want to take this little shaft that goes inside the bearing. You want to lube up your new little shaft here and the bearing with premix oil before you install it. Get our piston. I like to get the piston all nice and lubed, so when it goes back in the cylinder it's not just completely dry. So now we're going to get our piston in the right orientation. Slide her over, get our little cylinder here, pop her in nicely, so then we can actually slide this through here. You want to go through your bearing all the way if you can. We got our brand new little C-clips that are going to go inside here around the little groove, so then it can keep our piston from sliding side to side or explode out of the cylinder. Okay, now that this is all put together, we can take out our rag here. Make sure we don't get anything to drop inside our bottom end. And now we can throw on our cylinder. We have our cylinder here, and make sure everything's clean. Nothing, no hairs or anything is inside of there. And we can start sliding it back on. Before we throw on the cylinder, we want to throw in our brand new gasket. That's going to go there. The gasket kit I got came with 3 different gaskets. I'm just going to use whatever is closest to stock. This one seems to be the only one that is fairly thin. All the other ones are actually really thick. So let's throw this sucker on here. Now we can throw on our cylinder. The piston's a little finicky to get on there. All you need is a little extra lubricant with the premix there. Now we can start throwing on these 4 bolts here that keep the cylinder on. I'm going to cut off our little excess pieces here. Alright, before we put on our little pin here, that's for the power valve adjuster, we're going to throw in our brand new gasket. Alright, now that our new gasket is in, we can pop in this little pin here. Then you can put your pin back into place. And you can throw on your cover. Alright, now this cover is all back in. We can go to the other side and put that cover on. But before I get too far, I want to make sure that there's no scratches or anything happening. When I compress the piston, make sure everything's nice and smooth. Alright, everything seems to be good, so let's move on to the other side. So this side we're going to do the same thing that we did over on the other side. So let's throw on our brand new gasket here, get our cover to line up. all tight. So now we can move on to the cylinder head. Alright, so now all we're going to do is throw on our cylinder head here. Make sure everything's all cleaned and prepped for it. Gasket's on. You want to set it in your little pins here. We want to get our bolts and our brand new copper washers that are included in the kit. And throw those on. And just hand thread those suckers on there. Now let's tighten these down in a star pattern. Now we can throw on our radiator hose. Okay, now that all that stuff is on, now we can check if we have good compression. Oh! Yep, I can't start it with my hand, so that's good enough for 125. Now that we have all this stuff put together, we have one more thing that we need to throw on, is our little breather hose here. I'm going to actually clean this up. Next thing we can do is throw on our engine mounts. Alright guys, that's pretty much going to do it for the top end rebuild of this bike here. All I have to do now is fill it with coolant and it should start right up. You can throw on your pipe, plastics and all that, gas tank, you know. But before I throw on my pipe, I'm going to clean this sucker up. It's all rusty and gross and nasty. It's been sitting for 6 months, never was cleaned at all. So basically, if your pipe looks like this, make sure to subscribe and also check out the next video that will be coming up for this bike build. I'm going to show you guys how to make that sucker looking brand new again. So just like I said, if you guys like this video, make sure to give this video a big old thumbs up and also subscribe. I'll see you guys next video.